What do you think will be the necessary ways for managers to evolve in this new environment?
Now, again, when we say managers, let's think about different levels. So there's frontline managers and supervisors, then there might be department heads, and there might be executives. And we think it's a slightly different perspective for each of those.
Sure.
At the frontline management level, so direct supervisors, people who are working with teams of frontline agents, the ability to be able to identify and socialize best practice has never been easier. So, in other words, let's say you're a manager and you have a team of 30 people. We'll just pick a number. Which of your people are best at handling each different issue type or need that various customers have? Well, we can identify that now. And we can diagnose exactly what your best people are doing differently than average people in any given situation and be able to share that information with the whole team. So being able to do things like quality assurance and coaching and counseling, not just for each individual person, but to learn from the interactions this person is having so that we could share that information with everybody. The whole idea of AI being a continuous learning model applies to both the AI as well as the humans as well. So
Sure.
at that level,
I
it's
like
never
that.
been easier to coach and counsel. At the executive level, when you have every bit of information about every interaction every one of your people is doing with every customer, there's a lot of everys there, you now can search that database the same way we use ChatGPT to search the entirety of the internet. You can keystroke send a question into your keyboard and ask, what are three things that we could be doing that could greatly improve the customer experience? And in 10 seconds, here comes a list of possibilities and suggestions. You can ask a question like, how well do we do on Mondays at 9 compared to Fridays at 5? Is there any difference? How well do we do when we're really busy versus when things are quieter? How well do we do with customers who are brand new to the bank versus those who've been with us for 20 years? The point is, there's no end to what you can inquire about because there's no cost and there's no risk in asking a stupid question. It's just you and your keyboard, or even giving a verbal command and speaking with your voice. So it allows managers and leaders to be a little bit more like scientists, to be more curious, to constantly be looking for new ways to improve, but being able to access the database of every interaction we've ever done as the source to be able to learn more about how to get better.
How do you think AI is going to impact like the metrics?
AI is going to help companies recognize that their metrics, the traditional metrics, are immediately improving, but also open companies up to other metrics that they hadn't thought to think about in the past. Like, what insights are we deriving from all these interactions that we're doing with customers? How are we better able to predict customer needs or new product development? How can we accelerate matching the right product to the right person? So there's so many other things that companies could be measuring in their contact centers beyond just simply satisfaction or average handle time. Once again, in an environment where you're constantly underwater, where you're understaffed and underappreciated and overworked and underwater, there isn't time to lift your head up and think about what other value could we be creating. But that is possible now in a way that it never has before, lending itself to a whole range of metrics that you wouldn't have even thought of, like understanding rate. What percentage of time when a customer asks a question does the virtual assistant identify exactly what that person's issue is? Or what we call containment. What percentage of times was the virtual assistant able to completely resolve the customer's issue without having to transition to a human? So here's a whole new host of metrics that, again, wouldn't have even made sense 5 years ago, that are now very much a part of the dashboard of the evolved contact center.
For the small companies, small, maybe medium sized, what are some first steps for them to get into moving towards AI and customer service?
Yeah. If you're operating a contact center of as few as 3 to 5 seats, what we're offering at Glia is available to you. The democratization of this technology is what's so astounding. If what we were talking about was available only to the Fortune 100, it might still be a really cool story. But I think it's even cooler by virtue of the fact that
Yeah.
every community bank, every smaller credit union, if you have 5,000 customers and a 3-seat call center, everything we're talking about is available to you now.
Yeah, I think I mean, that's been the interesting thing with like even social media. And I know it has its flaws, but this idea that basically we broke distribution channels, we broke
Right.
um really monopoly power on some large organizations. And so it's been interesting to see how technology rolls out in this regard. And I agree with you. AI does seem like a major way to democratize.
Yeah, I don't know if I am the first to have thought of this. I'm sure I can't be, but it's always stuck with me that the most spectacular thing about technology is not what you can do, but it's who can do what.
Hmm.
I went to school at Syracuse University at the S.I. Newhouse School of Communications. And dear God, 100 years ago when I was going to school, having access to video cameras or editing equipment was a very exceptional thing. You had to work at a TV station or be part of some multi-million-dollar production facility to even be able to pick up a camera or edit video. Well, now every single one of us carries around in our pocket every day the full shooting and editing capability of what used to be available only to the networks
Right.
30 years ago. So again, it's that every one of us can now participate in this technology in a way that benefits each of us individually.
If you were to rewrite kick-ass customer service today with everything you know about digital transformation and AI, what would you change or emphasize differently?
Well, I think at that time when that piece came out, and this is now about 7 years ago, I think we would have predicted at that time that phone calls in customer service are going away. Everything's going digital. And certainly once we were in the midst of the pandemic, it sure felt that way. Like
Yeah.
we're on-screen people for good now, and everything that we do is going to be on our smartphones or our laptops or our tablets. That would have been a natural assumption 7 years ago, that there's going to be no such thing. By God, when we get to 2025, there'll be no such thing as a phone call. Well, what we've learned is, and again, specifically in financial services, there are certain kinds of issues that really require human contact. And that has traditionally been done on the phone. And so, whether it's an older person who's just not confident in their digital capabilities, or even a person who just insists on having a conversation with a human, the phone is still a viable methodology for being able to communicate and collaborate. But once again, when your first point of contact is with a virtual assistant who understands what you're saying and you're hearing their very natural human voice, if that can resolve the issue you have at the moment, great, you're good and you're done. So the idea that we need to force people to stop calling, as it turns out, is actually the wrong instinct, because it's perfectly fine for people to call as long as half or more of their issues can be resolved on the phone, but without the need to transition to a human.